down to like 105.
That's not even a cool down.
Right, and that's like, 10 o'clock at night, it's 105.
That's crazy.
Okay, so distress markers, these are water-based markers, and it's important to understand that they are water-based because a lot of times people try to compare these to Copic.
Totally different.
So just, you have to forget about that. But when you work with these, what's important to understand are the different surfaces, because different surfaces are going to work differently with the markers. So I have watercolor paper. This is a nice textured paper for watercolor. I have a manila tag. I have what's called specialty stamping paper, and this is a coated paper. It's coated on both sides, but it is not a glossy paper, but it is coated paper. Specialty stamping is really great for stamping detailed images. It's fantastic for coloring. And then I have glossy paper. Glossy paper is, it's glossy cardstock. It's not photo paper, and it's glossy on one and matte on the other. So, just the marker in general. It's a dual-tipped marker, so it has a brush nib on one side, and that brush nib is going to be very flexible. So it's going to give you almost like a paintbrush kind of effect. The other tip of the marker is going to be a fine tip marker. This is a plastic nib, and this is really nice because it will always stay detailed. Because it is plastic, it will never fray. So it can go around stencils or templates, and it will always have that detail point. When you use these, watercolor paper, manila tag, specialty paper, glossy paper, all of these will certainly take the color, but they will hold the color different as well. That's what you have to understand, especially because there's different ways to color. I like to watercolor with these. So we're going to work with a water brush. This is a refillable brush, so you're going to squeeze and release, and that's how you get water into the brush. And once you put these together, you're going to squeeze the side until you see water come out of the brush. Once you do that, you never squeeze the brush until you fill it again. It's a continuous brush. Every time the bristles bend, water will come out. And what's nice about it is that it doesn't have excess water everywhere. It continues to feed water. Okay? So that's really important when you're working with a water brush. This is called a detailer brush, so it has a really fine point, but it is in fact a bristle. So they will bend out when you're actually working with it. But it's nice because I can just use the tip of it and just color small areas. And you can see just touching it, it feeds the water out of the brush, which is great. The other brush, this is a flat water brush, so I'll get into that a little more of what we do with that brush. So let's talk about blending. Blending on watercolor paper, it's going to release a pretty good amount of color onto that paper. Blending onto manila tag, it doesn't really want to release much color. Specialty stamping paper, it releases a pretty good amount of color. And gloss paper doesn't release hardly at all. And what's weird is everyone would expect this one to release the most ink because it's slick, and it is not. Okay, so see, right away, we would be watercoloring on glossy going, this is not working. Yeah. So to me, watercolor paper is the easiest because it will blend the most. These two, specialty stamping is okay, but it creates like a cloudy film over the top, and I don't really like that. And glossy paper, I just don't bother with it. So let's go in and just talk different things about coloring. When you work with these markers, depending on how many markers you buy, you can use different markers together. So let's go, for example,
I think I have 12.
Well, we'll stick with these. Let's take sponge sugar. Nice one. Pink. Let's say I wanted to shade. I was going to color a flower, and I wanted to blend my color. I could touch a marker on a marker, blend a color,
What?
and it will always go back to sponge sugar. Okay? No matter what, it will always go back. Let's say you didn't have all the markers, but maybe you had ink pads. I could take a distress pad,
Firebrick.
and I could pick up color from my ink pad, and I can blend, and it will always go back to sponge sugar.
Wow.
Okay? Maybe I didn't have ink pads or markers. Maybe I had stain. Distress stain. Oh yeah. It's all about using what you have. I'm gonna pick this color, which would freak most people out.
Mom.
No, I'm not good.
That would freak me out. That would.
This is actually going to give you the longest blend because it is the most fluid. Stain is a fluid medium. Okay?
But your tip didn't go back.
Yeah, it still has ink.
Oh, okay,
so it's going
okay.
to go until the ink is gone, but it's always going to go back to spun sugar, no matter
Okay.
what. Okay, so when you're working with these, you only can work with distress because it's compatible ink. So food coloring, it would contaminate your marker. Adirondack dye would contaminate your marker. So distress pens, not paint, never paint. Distress markers, stains, or pads, they're all the same water-based dye. Okay, it's a different formulation because of what it's in. Like the ink that's in this marker is not the same ink that's in an ink pad, which is not the same ink that's in a stain, but it's the same base, and that's why they're very compatible. So it's nice. And if you say, well, why would you do this? If I was going to color a flower, I would just pick this up, blend a petal, and then pick it up, blend another petal, and you can go that way.
That's way easier than Copics.
It's nice. It is. Yeah. Now let's go the reverse though. Let's go on the opposite direction. What if I had a dark color like chip sapphire, but I wanted to blend it? I can go in reverse. So here I'm going to take water, and I'm going to pick up water the same way I would pick up ink, and this is going to give me a light color, but it will go back to dark.
Wow. I have these at home, but I've been too scared to use them.
These markers make you look like you know what you're doing. They do. Because I'm not a good colorer at all, but I'll show you ways that it will make you look like you got it. Because I did take a Copa class. And when the teacher said, well, this kind of coloring isn't for everyone, I was like, I get it. I can read between the lines. Basically say, like, you did not understand this class. Because it was more like an algebra class. I just heard numbers the whole time. I couldn't look. Okay, so that's just blending. Now, these ways that I showed you to blend color, that's really not the way that I use the markers at all. I like to watercolor with them because it's easier. So I'll show you that. So let's take this off and let's watercolor. Oh, I'll just use the same side. Let's watercolor a blueprint stamp. Or we can do this month's tag. Why not?
His favorite.
Why not do this month's tag right from the block? Because we have the Dragonfly, we'll do it. Okay, we're going to stamp in waterproof ink. You need to stamp in something permanent when you go to color, otherwise your image will smear. So archival ink is a permanent ink. So I'm just going to go in and stamp that out. And just good pressure, that's all you got to do. Okay. Now one of the differences, while that's drying, I'll just talk real quick about the paper. When I talked about specialty stamping paper, specialty stamping is coated on both sides. So I'll just show you the difference because this is all scrap paper anyway, with a detailed stamp. So if I'm going to go in and stamp, and I'm just going to stamp on cardstock. So this is the back side of glossy paper, but it's just cardstock. It looks okay. It's just okay. But that same image on specialty paper, completely different.
Oh, wow.
Very detailed. No, it's because this is the same on both sides. It's the coating is designed, well, even if I stamped on the glossy side, I'll show you. When you, specialty stamping paper it's a coated paper, because even glossy, like a lot of times when you stamp with glossy,
it can smear.
Glossy, well, you'll see just the detail of that. Glossy paper, you get that what's called surface tension. You know when you stamp in it, like you get those light areas. That's gloss paper. Whereas this, the ink actually goes into the paper. But yeah, so you always get really nice detail, and your color is very vivid on this. The downside to this paper is when you go in watercolor, you get that like
Cloudy, as you say.
it's cloudy. That's really the best way. I always say milky, but cloudy is better. It's always cloudy, and I don't like that. So because my image, it doesn't have a lot of color. It just stays cloudy. So that's why I like to work on watercolor paint. All right, so here's how we go in color. So when I go in color with this, I'm just going to pick colors that I want to work with. Doesn't really matter. Use what you like. So we don't have to worry about starting with a certain color or shade, or you use what you like. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to carefully color part of an image.
That's so careful.
That's right. Now watercolor requires two things. Water and color. That's it. So, right. So I don't want to color in the entire thing and then have to go back and blend it. I just need some color so my water can mix my color.
That is so cool.
Okay? Now, when I color, I like to color outside the lines just a little bit. Now here's what you have to understand. If I want to add color, which I do, I cannot take a marker and color onto wet paper. Two things will happen. One, it will pull up the water the same way it did
Oh
here,
yeah.
right? So if I dip it into the water, it's just going to put water into the tip. Two, coloring over wet paper with a nib will rough up the paper. It will start to peel apart. So what I do is I go in with my marker and I can put color on my craft sheet. And now I can go in and pick up wet color and I can apply wet color to wet color. So it's very easy to just go in and add some color. If you didn't like to work on a wet surface, then you can dry it. So if you dry it, then you can go and color right onto the surface. That's not a problem. But that's one of the things that people forget all the time is they want to go in and blend and they try to color with the marker and it just doesn't work. Okay, so now I'm just going to go in, I'll just start coloring this image. Again, really carefully applying my markers.
Wow.
And then just go in and blend. And I'm not being too particular as to how I color, because I do want some color out there. If I want to add, I'm just going to put in some different colors. Again, right on my craft sheet.
Which I have and love.
It's a great surface. And now I can just pick up those colors. Look at that. I told you, it just makes you look like...
That is too cool.
Alright. Not too concerned, but I am going to add some.
I don't think I'm going to be scared of using mine anymore.
So far, so good? We're good? Next, I'm going to take some additional colors. And I'm going to color other areas. And that's really important to remember when you're coloring, is just color part of the image. Don't keep coloring everything in. Because see how we can just blend that out? Perfect. So next I want to create a shadow. And to create a shadow, I like to work with pumice stone. Pumice stone is a nice gray. A lot of times when people try to create shadow, they use black. Black is very hard to create a shadow because it's so concentrated. You have to blend so much to get it to be a shadow color. But here, I can just color right over my stamp. And I can go in and it's going to be the perfect shadow color right from the beginning. Just by blending with some water. Create my drop shadow. Difficult. I told you. It makes you look like you know what you're doing. So I want to add some color into those words, but I just want to create a light color. So I'm just going to go in with some of that and I'll just add a little highlight. You know what I mean? Like don't overthink it. And I'm going to dry it. Because I want to layer. So whenever you want to layer, you need to dry it. Okay. It's dry. So once this is dry, I can go in and actually add a light source, a highlight. Because in Coloring 101, they always said, leave a light source, you know, leave that light area. That would require me to remember that. Instead, I just color and I'm like, ooh, light source. So picket fence it's a white ink. It's not a gel pen, it's not a paint pen. It's actually, I don't know if I have any dark. I'm sure I do. Picket pen.
I'll tell you, my daughter does not talk in regular English. It is broken china. That looks like you.
That is me. That is me. I talk in distress. Always. It's a good pencil. This is an ink that will go on clear, but it's going to start drying white. So that's on a color side, and this is on craft. So what's nice about this is that I can go in and add my highlights, and as it dries, it's going to give you that light area. But what's great about this is that it's still an ink, so I don't have to live with that scribble. I can go with my water brush and just soften this out into my background to create those light areas. All right, this is only the beginning. So I really like to water this out. Okay. So now that I have a background, I'm going to add a little bit more color over the top. I like this color. So when I clean the brush, always clean the brush on your craft sheet, okay? If you get in the habit of wiping this off onto a towel, it will pull the water out of the brush, and then you'll have to squeeze it again to get the bristles wet again. So if you clean it on your craft sheet, it will always stay wet. That's it. Okay, so next we're going to take our background, and we're going to get out our paper cutter, and we're going to... Anything is a paper cutter that cuts me. I am the paper cutter. I'm carefully measuring. Okay, there's our background. So I'm going to blend. I'll take a blending tool. I'll still leave them up.
Oh, that's all right.
That's fine. Let's go in with some color. And I'm just going to go around the edge with my blending tool. And you could use any color. It doesn't have to be brown, but I like brown. I like brown a lot.
No.
I was about to say, no, we didn't know that.
No way.
You, brown, come on. Okay.
But brown go for them.
That's right. That's right. So what's nice about edging this is that I want to create a background color. Because see how this is still really white? It's still a little too white for me. So I want to go with a background color. So now I'm going to switch water brushes. I'm going to go from the detailer to the flat water brush. What's cool about this flat water brush, well, there's a lot of things that's cool. What's cool about this is that if I wanted to, we'll go here, I can go in and I can use this to create a lot of effects. So for example, if I had stain, I could take stain, I can pick up color, and I can create a nice wash of color for the background, right? Nice, flat, even color. But if I wanted to mix some different colors, and maybe I was going to work on something larger, a canvas or something like that, I could take my brush, and this one you're going to just squeeze just to rinse the bristles. But I can take this brush, and the end of this brush comes off. Now I have a large round brush. So this brush is going to allow me much more of a fluid effect to actually go in and kind of mop color down, because my bristles are so long. It's just a round brush. And that's going to allow you really to create a nice blended background. And it's a synthetic bristle, so you can squeeze out water or just spray it, and then your bristles are clean. And then to go back to a flat, you just put it right back in, and it's right back to a flat. So it's nice. So I'm going to use the flat brush on my background, just with water. So let's get some of that green out of there. So with my wet flat brush, I'm going to go right over everything. And all that's going to do is it's going to take that ink that I had in the background, that I did around my edges, and it's just going to soften it and kind of bring it through everything on my Easy. Perfect background. Perfect background. Always. So whether you did blue, the background would be blue. But it's a background that kind of goes with what you're doing. And you would think with all that water that my watercolor would have gone crazy, but it doesn't. Okay. Said my wishes.
What do you do?
Okay. I love this brush. Okay. So next, I'm going to take some colors that I colored with, whatever those are. Just a few. Just so you have a mix. And then I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to get some of that color. And then I'm just going to
Slick.
splatter this. Oh yeah, it's good. Look at that. Oh. It's nice. Then we're going to dry it for just a minute. Not too long. And then you're going to take it off. And it just gives a perfect little accent to your background. Just little dots. And I do that because people take themselves too seriously when they color, right? You want to color inside the lines. What if you have a fingerprint? Well, now when you do all of this, it looks like everything is intentional. Everything is like, it's exactly what you meant to do. So after I do my splatters, I like to go in and just give it just a little misting of color. So I'm going to go in, let's take a black, I'm going to go with a couple of colors. I'm going to take this and I'm just going to put this on.
No.
I have one of those someplace. Or had it.
What is it?
Texture marker.
This is color down there.
Oh.
Just make sure marker into an airbrush.
Well, isn't that the cool?
Yeah. So over a, see those little tiny speckles of black? Yeah. So anything. See?
Oh.
So if you're really close, you get a dark color, but if you're really far away. And you can put any color. So like a lot of times, if I'm doing Christmas cards, I'm normally going with a white marker,
I have one, or I
like
had
picket fence, and you could do it over something dark. But you can go in with your picket fence and same thing.
Is it just air? Yeah, it's just air.
Yeah. And then you get that little, see the little white?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. It's fun. Cool thing. I bought it a long time ago. I think they have it in the kids section.
Yeah,
It's
that's where I
not
got
your...
it.
Yeah. It's like in the toy section.
Yeah.
What is
Mine
that?
is
I've never
red.
seen that.
It's a little marker thing.
A little marker?
It's a color spritzer.
Color spritzer.
I think Crayola makes one.
Oh. I've seen that.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I like the white a lot. So those are some very simple things that you can do with markers. Now, another thing we can do